right, well, let's go on and get started. We're just after 3 o'clock today. We'll get another governance workshop going here. Not too broad of an agenda today. I'd like to kind of focus in on, the two outstanding KIPS drafts on the forum. If you want to let me post this link here. If you want to take a look, I think that the two that I really would like to see discussed. The first one is the TWAM guys, and if people have more discussions that they want to hear about, or thoughts that they want to hear from TWAM, and then KIP 12 extension. So yeah, why don't we go on ahead and hop into the first topic, which is the grant for the TWAM group. In case anyone hadn't seen yet, they posted another update on Twitter today, and I think it's generating some good excitement. I think these guys are just pros. And
Okay, I'll start. Go speaking, it looks good. I like it. Is there any sort of could just fund research and development? Are we going to be funding research and development for them to just do this on their own, or are they going to be doing this on their own and then kind of feeding it back into KeeperDAO? I guess is a thing statement.
Yeah, so the grant, if you look at it specifies sort of what they're going to do research and development on, and so yeah, this is in collaboration with us. So they're going to do specific research and development on essentially using the coordination game to make TWAMs more efficient, right? And determine the best way for AMMs to plug in to coordination, the best way for us to provide sort of rebates or whatever, like MEV sharing
Gotcha.
to them, or to them or whatever, but it really applies to every AMM. But yeah, clearly in their case.
Okay, cool. That was my first question. So.
Will this be the first TWAM on the market upon completion, or is there an example already out in the wild?
I believe that Frax Swap implements a TWAM. So I don't know that this one's first to market. However, this one of the reasons we, I personally am interested in working with them is that this one is probably the most rigorous attempt, and is backed by sort of the designers of the TWAM concept at Paradigm. And so, and they're doing this in a very methodical, as you've seen if you've read their blog posts, in a very methodical, data-driven way, which is good because gas efficiency is super important at the end of the day, and a lot of work goes into that. So, so it's not the first to market, but as opposed to the Frax implementation, I think that this is my understanding, and my, what I understand about this is that this is the more general purpose implementation. So something that could go big, easier, and that it's much more refined in terms of exactly how the contract is designed, how the market's designed, and how everything operates. And obviously, if this grant were to happen, it would become even more sophisticated because it would be driven by a coordinated arbitrage mechanism to make it even more efficient and sort of unique.
Okay. Thank you.
One of the interesting things about TWAMs, I guess, is that in a vacuum, they're not particularly gas efficient. It's somewhat hard. So Dave White and some other folks at Paradigm published the paper back last year in like October or September or something. I don't remember, but it's been a while. Usually, these things hit mainnet pretty quickly, but it's taken some time because it's a little bit tricky to actually implement in a way that is gas efficient. And so some of them have started percolating through, like I said, the Frax one being the notable example, but that is a little bit of an inferior take, and so it's likely to be a very useful primitive. Getting it right is a little bit tricky, and so we would be, if this grant happens, we would be sort of part of making sure that it goes right, in the sense that we'd sort of be adding additional juice to make this as efficient and as good as possible, right? So.
Thanks for the added details, Hazard. Kind of what it sounds like is that folks are looking for a little bit more, let's say, clarification on stuff, which is great. Does anyone have any concerns? Just thinking about if we need to provide some feedback to the TWAM guys. Does anyone have any concerns from what they've read about the proposal?
I don't know if it's a concern. I just have a question. I guess this thing kind of hinges on us or them or us together proving that TWAM with KeeperDAO is more profitable for LPs than the Uniswap V2 fee structure. Do we envision that as like it's pretty easy to prove, or is that it's going to be a challenge, or how do we see that?
It's that's what we expect to be the case. We expect that it will be, otherwise we wouldn't really do this. But that said, it is hard to prove. I won't say prove, but it's hard to demonstrate, because markets are very dynamic, and you have to choose your metrics carefully. And so one of the reasons that this would be very potentially useful is because they're very data driven, the folks building this, and we actually have a quant on staff now who is very interested in TWAM as well, and who would likely work on this with them from our side if this went forward. So the benefit here is that they would together be able to construct a very convincing case study, essentially, and demonstrate this very conclusively in a way that would be, sort of research quality, which is sort of the burden of proof, right? Like, you want to be able to demonstrate this conclusively. And as opposed to another project where they'd be like, yeah, let's plug it in and see what happens. This could provide kind of that high standard of sort of a gold standard, of evidence that this is going to be very useful. And why that's useful is because then this can be replicated. The strategy can be replicated with other AMMs and other projects, and sort of help drive arbitrage volume for this purpose through the coordination protocol. And I want to also just say, just in case it's not clear, because we're talking about research projects and case studies, like, what is the ultimate end result that's desired here? The ultimate end result that's desired is that all TWAM volume essentially becomes coordination game volume, right? TWAMs run on arbitrage. Arbitrageurs are who execute orders against the internal TWAM market. So you can think of TWAM volume as coordination game volume if this works. And what that means is that if this category of TWAMs for large on-chain orders becomes standardized or popular in the way that AMMs, like constant function market makers like Uniswap, became, then, that's sort of the bet. That's sort of the investment here, is that the growth of TWAMs as a category would be the same as the growth of the volume from the TWAMs in the coordination game. So one would be the other. So that would benefit us, meaning everybody here, and the DAO, everybody staking, Rook, etc. So that is the ultimate end goal here. It's not to kind of find the answer to an interesting question. What's implied but not stated necessarily in this agreement is, if it is more efficient, well, they're going to do that, right? So if it is more efficient, then TWAM volume is going to go through the coordination protocol and become coordination game volume, right?
And if it is more efficient, we'd also have like a research heavy, like kind of a hybrid between like a case study and like a research paper almost, that we can just shove in front of everybody.
It could be a research paper for researchers, yeah, and then you could just part it out for a case study for marketing or for whatever other purposes, and then wave it in everybody's face. And if it doesn't work, I don't know, better work.
But how confident are we that the results will be what we want it to be?
I would say that our the way that this grant is structured is in line with confidence levels, right? And you don't get 0 out of it if it doesn't work out. We would still get other things as well and a lot of data. But obviously we expect and hope and want it to work that way. And there's no reason to believe that it wouldn't work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, are there any concerns that this wouldn't be seen as independent research in a way? Because we're kind of paying them,
I mean, all research is grant funded, so I don't know. I would defend the same thing. And it's I think that again, this is why they're ideal candidates in my mind, is because they're very data driven. And what they'll do is construct a study that should be able to stand on its own with its own metrics and merits, and it shouldn't involve them, and everything will be very open source, et cetera, and verifiable and stuff. And so the data should speak for itself, right? And there shouldn't need to be a lot of interpretation going on. If that's a concern that folks out there, have, then that's why I think they're going to work well as sort of creators of this case study, because they really have, excellent credentials and track record for doing this in a data-driven way, evidence-based way.
Okay, cool. Yeah, those are my questions.
And because we're paying them regardless of the outcome, that's important, right?
Yeah.
Like the payment here is not contingent on a particular outcome being reached, and that's part of why, right?
Yeah, that's kind of crucial. Not like we're giving them a bonus to produce like a desired outcome. No, that's good. Okay, cool. Thanks for answering.
Was there reasoning for coming to us for the funding because of the coordination game technology instead of getting a grant from, a more traditional fund?
So they basically, what was a question mark for them, because like I said, TWAMs run on arbitrage. But that's kind of a vague thing to say, but arbitrage is what makes the pricing curve update periodically. So you put a large order in, and then the updates to the price curve happen as the market moves based on arbitrageurs catching it up with the rest of the market in some way. And so that the point at which we made contact was the point where they were modeling the dynamics of their contract in a simulator, but they didn't really know how to model the arbitrage because it would be on the open market, and there's a lot of different factors that affect it. And so, they had some kind of basic assumptions about it, but they didn't actually know what they would be able to do to attract arbitrageurs, how they would be able to talk with them or kind of collaborate with them and kind of understand that part of the dynamics, which is really crucial to make the contract work as a product, and so we made contact over that at sort of at that perfect moment. And so it's really the reason that they wanted to work with us is because we have the perfect thing for them. Like even in the absence of things like coordinating the arbitrage and rebating MEV and doing all this other stuff, which is great, which they love. Just the idea of being able to kind of secure like arbitrage as a service, that was already interesting to them. And then the additional aspect of, well, it's not just arbitrage as a service, it's sort of arbitrage as a service, but MEV protection and MEV sort of profit sharing or the rebate in Rook from these things, and or however we want to structure it. It's one of the parts of the grant. All these things which are really fascinating are things that they didn't even know really existed out there, and were really happy to talk about and really excited about, because that was sort of the missing piece for them in this, right? Was how will the arbitrage work? And so that's why they were really interested in this and doing this with us. And the grant is a way to kind of be working together, because there's some unanswered questions about how the interfaces are going to work, like at the contract level, and just some little details. But of course, also to say, so that they can say to their future, investors and partners or users, that this isn't this is something that is here's the data. This is objectively the best way for us to do this, so they don't have any kind of weird dependencies and stuff. So yeah, it's sort of for all of those reasons. And they do have a grant as well from Balancer, where they're building a TWAM on top of a Balancer liquidity pool. So that's something that they have been very public about. So I think their strategy is essentially to look at grants working with projects that are going to kind of be a part of their kind of launch stack, if you want, or this TWAM stuff, to make sure that there's incentives aligned.
It sounds like it could open some doors for us in general.
Yeah, if there's like a TWAM on top of a balancer pool, is there a way to, plug us in?
Yeah, this is sort of the soft side of the grant, because it's not written, of course. But from my perspective, in its strategic terms, okay, let's say Sam from Frax or somebody wants to talk about their TWAM. Okay, well that's interesting, and it is. These guys want to talk about their TWAM. Well, they're backed. They're talking to Dave White. They're talking to Dan Robinson. They're in with Paradigm. They're talking to Hayden. They're talking to Uniswap. They're building on Balancer. They want us to be at that table. I'm going to say, okay, I'm listening, right? Oh, and you're very data-driven. Oh, you worked with FPGAs. Oh, you have a very technical background. Oh, you're pre-launch. You're pre-token. You're pre-product. You want to do a case study. You want to work with us on this. All of that sounds very appealing to me, right? It does sound like there's a lot of, I wouldn't say doors that can be opened as much as a seat at the same table as all those other folks, all those other projects. And that's where you can get into good conversations, right? Because we know the work they're going to be doing is going to meet the standards of these folks who are also going to want to support their project. So that's very good. That's not their responsibility to worry about or manage, and that's not written in the grant, because that's something that our side cares about more than their side. But yeah, that's absolutely a factor.
Great. Well, why don't we go on ahead and pivot to KIP12 extension? I know that this was discussed a little bit town hall last week. wanted to just kind of open the floor for this up as well.
All right, I'll start again. I'm in favor. Obviously, pretty biased answer, but I think Hazard's doing a pretty good job, pretty great job. Um, he's a great communicator, great leader, and yeah, that's my input there.
I second that.
Definitely.
But so what if anything would we want to see change? We don't exactly have a quorum here, not that it's necessary, but like what is this something that for people seems to kind of be in the background, or is there things here you'd want to kind of change maybe? Because depending on how rapidly parts of the reorg go, you know, we might supersede any extension to KIP 12 sort of partway through the quarter. You know, I don't know that we're going to kind of extend this sort of ad hocness too much longer. That, you know, it'd be nice to have sort of a more fully fleshed out game plan. I guess, you know, we did the quarterly report. There was some feedback there, but like in terms of how this has been going, is there like what aspects would you want to focus on? Because if we did another quarter, one thing to be looking at would be to maybe make it better to communicate what are the priorities. And so I'd be curious from folks, like what kind of priorities do you think should be the priorities that things are kind of roll up into for the next quarter?
So, Hazard, I mean, this might not be on the table here, but you know, in terms of kind of this continuity and leadership that both you and Joey have brought, I mean, I would argue that I'd like to see it extended through the end of the year, not through next quarter. Is there a reason that you want to keep this quarter to quarter?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's not so much that I mind keeping particulars of like, oh, the, you know, Hazard's doing this and Joey's doing this. Like, I don't mind that as much as I kind of want there to be the minimum possible, you know, amount of time between when the DAO is basically, you know, or when, you know, the contributors are basically forced to be reviewed in a way and come to the table. Like I can't sort of kick the can. Nobody can kick the can. We have to come. We have to do all of our due diligence now, or you know, we're turned into pumpkins. And so that was the main reason for that. It's less about not wanting to or not feeling like we should. The other reason was just that it was unclear when we started, when we wrote KIP 12, if this would need to be superseded by something else, right? You'll recall that we were thinking in sort of bigger terms and how should we structure this, and then we decided collectively, we decided to kind of keep it simple and sort of flexible and kind of just try to move forward quickly and see where we get. And so if we do that again, that's good. But personally, one of the priorities that I'm thinking about for the next quarter is sort of, I don't know, I've been saying sort of hardening the organization in the sense that making sure that we understand exactly all of the details that we need to from a sort of like a theory of the organization, like it's the DAO, what does it mean to be a contributor, community member, any kind of legal entity stuff that we need to sort out, regulations and all of these things, and then making sure that the governance is like working and clicking properly, which arguably it's not today, and just kind of fixing all these details so that as we, you know, hopefully are growing in value and we're getting more people participating, that's also going to attract, you know, more actors, and some of them may be opportunistic, right? Some of them may stress test things in ways that have not been done before in the past. And so as hopefully our profile increases, I want us to be ready for all of those possibilities. And so I guess that's a long way of saying that KIP12 is probably not the right vehicle for a like a durable organizational plan. You know, like it's good, it gets us going, but I wouldn't want to kind of ride it longer than we had to before replacing it with something more comprehensive. And that thing may include everything in KIP12, as in like Hazard's doing the same job, maybe Jay-Z's doing the same job, you know, lots about it is similar, but there's sort of more there maybe, you know, and um, more responsibilities, more touch points, more I don't know, rituals and reporting and stuff like that, requirements, and just sort of more there. So it's sort of about that, I guess. Yeah, just kind of yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thinking about, what you asked us, like, what would we want to see changed? I'd kind of like to flip that back on you and say, did you feel like that there was anything that you weren't able to do under that set of powers that you think is important for us to address, or that you think, okay, this this from KIP 12 probably doesn't actually need to be included for this extension? Is there any kind of things that you would actually want to see changed from it?
No, there wasn't stuff that I felt that we were constrained by. Really, the KIP 12 is about spending authority. Specifically, it's specifically to sort of recruit contributors, which is the main thing that wouldn't be possible without governance. Um, any other kind of spending of any kind that's happened over the quarter was captured in some other things. So spending for contributors in particular, just to allow hiring, was essentially in like a de facto sense, like that was really what KIP 12 allowed. That might not be clear, but that's really what it allowed. And titles, I guess they're saying that titles for Jay-Z and I, but any other things were, and as well as sort of overhauling the internal structure of how the contributors work. But it's not clear that that was even really something that was ever under governance anyway. And so like clarifying that and making that clear is something, again, to do in the next quarter, making the organization or the theory of this organization a little bit clearer. But no, I mean, yeah, no, I don't think there was anything that wasn't able to be done. The one thing, I mean, there's lots of things that we did get and are still very very busy. I know communication has sucked sometimes, and that's something that I had higher hopes for. I had hopes that we would be able to be more communicative and be more sort of have more touch points, and that's part of what I don't not necessarily want to build it into an extension of this and try to worry about it too much, because this worked. It worked well. I think we did a lot during that quarter, but it's just one of those things where like it's working now, but it might not under different circumstances. And I don't really like it. I don't think most people like the level of communication today. And I think we have some ways to fix that are probably better than writing it in a KIP. But ultimately, it would be good to have something more comprehensive there to kind of say, these are the people, or when you have a team, this is what that means. When you have somebody who's a facilitator or whatever for the team, this is what they are. The DAO can contact them at any time, or they have to communicate regularly, or whatever. And the way we've been doing this internally is that we kind of do something, we practice a particular way of doing something, and then if it's working, we write it up and say, this is the way we're doing something. So it kind of happens in retrospect rather than trying to prospectively write it out and then you realize that, oh shit, this doesn't really work, this kind of sucks, and then try to do it again and again. So what we might do if we have another quarter to kind of experiment is to try to experiment with some of those different things. And then whatever's working, we can kind of codify and say, this is what you got, this is how you kind of have to do it, right? This is the expectation. And that makes it so that we can't kind of change our minds down the line, or, it kind of secures the fact that like this works, and so this is how we should do it. And that can be like a two-sided discussion, like like the community's like, this is working, every stakeholder saying this is working, let's keep doing this. Today we're not doing anything it's certainly with communication that I think people are happy with. But I don't necessarily know what to do. We have a lot of ideas, but I don't know which of those is going to work and which is going to be the best. So I would say we should probably experiment more and prioritize doing more experiments with that so that we can find something where we, at the end of the quarter or whenever we decide to kind of turn the page and put something else in place, we can kind of say, that really worked. We should make that kind of like how we do this and write that up, right? So that that's how we follow it from then on, that can make sure that if, something happens or something changes, like the community still has this sort of thing that's working, that, is their check and balance, I guess, There's lots of things like that. We actually have some people who might want to get involved who are researchers in this kind of thing in the corporate world and in other places that can maybe be helpful to say, oh yeah, you need to have a trapdoor here, you need to have a trigger here, you need to be able to do this or that, or this is useful in this situation. That might be helpful. It might be fun to talk with them, collectively and see.
All right. Does anyone else have thoughts, questions, changes, or anything else that they'd like to see from this?
I guess I have a request. Like if someone has examples of like a DAO that does this stuff particularly well in terms of like communicating like their progress, interaction and stuff, please send that to me. Just DM me. I'm quite curious because I've been thinking about how we're gonna do that once we like more formally launch like teams through governance and stuff. Because I think there needs to be some minimum like communication requirements for each of them. So yeah, if you have some good examples, just send them over to me.
All right. Well, I think that we can look at kind of opening the floor, thinking about, and this was brought up to me as well, in terms of like the intent of the governance workshop is to both work on, existing drafts as well as come together and think about what new proposals might need to be created. So, I'd be happy to kind of open the floor here, see if somebody's got some kind of topic or prospective draft of a KIP that they want us to talk through or think about as a small community here. So is there anything that people want to see kind of put into a KIP, some aspect of how this protocol is going? I'm kind of, instead of rambling, why don't I just stop and open the floor if there's anything that people want to talk about in that regard. If not, we can sign off a little bit early and give folks, some more time back on their Wednesday afternoon.
Let me jump in here. So I'm actually going to pivot as a community member from Ren and kind of just come here proposing some idea. So over there, Ren is having trouble getting liquidity for its Ren assets on whatever chain asset, and then they were asking me if it's possible to like come to you guys and then get the KD's like CVX stake and try to incentivize the Ren asset pools. So as a Ren community member, that's kind of like my proposition is what can that be done, and what's something you want from the Ren community for that.
So this is something new to me. So really interesting to have brought that up. In terms of our CVX is relocked right now. And so I just confirmed with Winthrop over there that we'll be good to go as soon as the snapshot happens at 0 UTC, or I believe that's 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock tonight. My UTC calculator's off. So in terms of like You know, if it's something that we needed to do with unlocked CVX, then you know that's kind of outside of the scope for the next 16 weeks. But if is this something that we can do with just our vote, and that's all we would collaborate on together? Is that what you're getting at, Wes?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is just to I honestly I ignore CVX. I don't really know what it like. As far as I'm concerned, you just kind of vote for some random pools, and then you get some sort of shitcoin reward from that. And I was just saying like, okay, can you is yeah, directing your votes to these Ren assets to try and get more rewards for those pools to deepen the liquidity there.
You know, I think that's a good question. I would have to, you know, you kind of you know, do a little what's in it for me kind of situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, if we're talking about some kind of longer term agreement for the whole 16 weeks while we're locked for right now, you know, I think that would be interesting if this is on a week by week basis and they don't want to bribe, but they want to do something OTC to us. I'd look into that as well. You know, as I've kind of said to the CVX working group, you know, I'll talk to whoever. You know, what we found is that some of the proposals that we've gotten, just you know, after digging into them, didn't really have that structure that was really, let's call it, truly mutually beneficial. You know, I know that Ren's got some great opportunities, whether it's between their dark nodes or you know, if they wanted to do OTC or if there was something else there. You know, happy to collaborate with them. You know, as you guys know that you know, we have a good working relationship with them, and with you know the Ren Lab stuff coming out, and especially looking at catalog, you know that is exciting already in terms of collaboration with them. So you know, I don't have an answer there until I kind of know what can be in it for us and what they'd be willing to do.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's what I'm kind of seeing is I don't see how it's mutually beneficial. At least like in from KD's perspective, you'd probably be sacrificing some yield. And well, yeah, again, yeah, I'll get a group together over there and see if we can craft something up for you or for KeeperDAO to look at and pick apart.
Yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate you taking the lead on that. You know, just my thought would be that you know I would say that you know some community members have been pretty excited about keeping our regular bribe revenue going, and us liquidating those bribes for what we're doing right now, specifically for Rook. I, you know, it specifically in the previous partnership talks I've had around this, people have not wanted us to sell the tokens that we get. So, you know, I think that would have to kind of be understood by the community first before we get too deep into any kind of partnership conversations. Because if people are going to be upset that we're no longer, say, liquidating bribes and we have to hold something for an extended period of time or whatever, you know, I think that as a community, we kind of need to figure that out first.
Makes sense to me. All right.
You know, I'm happy to see if anyone's got any additional thoughts about what we're doing with our biweekly CVX bribe coins that we get. Are people happy with what we're doing now? Is there some other strategies that we should look into doing some research on? Yeah, open for feedback there. Ape, you got something for me?
No, nothing really. Just token price go up is good for me, so I guess I like the buybacks, but it's not of strategic value, I guess.
Appreciate the input at least, though. Yeah, I wouldn't say that I've been disappointed at all with our status quo. Does anyone else have any thoughts on this?
What was it specifically? Token price go up? Was that it?
Yeah, well, yeah, continuing our Rook buyback with the biweekly bribe revenue.
I'm kind of indifferent. I could probably be swayed either way. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
thinking about, like, and this is just me kind of waffling out loud here. But like what else could we do specifically with these kind of tokens we accumulate? Looking at kind of that meta governance play, I don't think we'd accumulate anything, especially anything fast enough for us to make an impact on any of these protocols governance kind of proposals or anything, at least for a very long time in terms of accumulation. So not too sure about that. Thinking about targeting specific assets that could be staked for additional revenue. So, let's say that we only get CVX CRV with our bribe revenue that we then stake on Convex, and we earn, I think right now the number's like 42 or something percent on that staked CVX CRV. So, that would be kind of magnifying the return on those biweekly bribes. Plus, we'd have the flexibility to walk or do something with that as well. Yeah, I just think that some research would need to go into kind of, holistically looking at what we're doing with these coins. Okay. Well, if not much to be said on that, was there any other topics, potential draft kips that anyone wanted to bring up or discuss? If not, we can go on ahead and adjourn today. All right. Well, why don't we go on ahead and draw this to a close? Appreciate everybody hopping up. Good feedback, especially Starfire Wes. Thanks for the good questions here. Hazard, thanks for coming and talking about KIP 12 extension and the TWAM guys. And yeah, we'll go on ahead and close this one out today. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Hazard.